Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to episode 20 of our play-by-email game of War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition. We're playing against XTRG, he's playing as the Japanese, and we are playing as the Allies. It is December 25th, it is Christmas of 1941, and so far the war is going roughly expected, but it's also not going too disastrously for the Allies. What I mean by that is, we're losing, but we're also getting our licks in. We've destroyed a Japanese regiment off of Mersing. We have given the Japanese a couple of bloody noses in China, and we have also given the Japanese Air Force, most recently, a bloody nose over Singapore. So overall, we're hanging in there, but, we're not obliterating the enemy by any means. Meanwhile, it is probably going to be a quiet turn. I don't have a lot in action this turn, and unless XTRG shows up somewhere completely by surprise, then this, I assume, will be a quiet turn. Last turn, we had a massive air battle over Singapore, which resulted in some 60 or 70 aircraft, maybe 50, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 70 Japanese aircraft shot down. We lost about 30 shot down, but we lost about another 30 that were damaged, so they won't be able to fly this turn. So I decided to go ahead and order my aircraft at Singapore to stand down, at least the fighters. Meanwhile, I'm going to be bombing the Japanese troops at Mersing and launching an attack against the troops there. I don't think it'll succeed, but we'll see how things go. Meanwhile, you can see here we're moving through the recon phase. Thus far, nothing's really happened yet. We had a submarine that was basically depth charged by Japanese destroyers just a little bit, but nothing, serious seems to have come of it. Meanwhile, we're using our aircraft near the Pearl Harbor area against Japanese subs in the vicinity. We've had a really tough time doing much of anything to Japanese submarines. We have multiple anti-submarine warfare task forces, but we haven't really been able to do anything against them. You can see here the Japanese continue to sweep with large numbers of aircraft over Singapore. That was 39 zeros between the two sweeps. We're continuing to bomb Japanese troops retreating from Yichang, north of Hankow. So hopefully, we do a little bit more damage. Most of these are just disabled squads against those troops that are retreating. We are pursuing them, but there's an area with no roads, so it's kind of hard to do much of anything there. You can see here the Japanese are sending in a large raid here, 45 Sally 2s. So again, we shot down something like 30 to 40, maybe even 50 Sallies last turn, but the Japanese have a lot of aircraft in the area. That was probably a month and a half of Japanese bomber production for their best army bomber, but nonetheless, they still have quite a few left in the area, and they're launching a raid with them. You can see they assigned zeros and Oscars to escort this time, so they had 61 escorts in the air versus 45 bombers. The bombers are getting hit by some flak, so they're doing some damage to some supply dumps. It looks like we saw one aircraft damaged on the ground, some runway hits. They had at least two aircraft that were, well, it looked like two aircraft were shot down. We're seeing 5 damaged, 1 destroyed. Presumably some of those damaged aircraft will crash on landing. Meanwhile, according to the combat results, we'll see if this is true, but according to the combat results, there are 5 Buffalo 1s damaged, 1 Buffalo destroyed on the ground, and 1 B-17D damaged. It's also claiming 4 airbase hits, 2 supply hits, 7 runway hits. We'll take a look and see what the actual damage is once the combat is over. We can see, what the status of Singapore is. It was 0-0-0, so what I mean by that is there had been no damage to the field or anything around it coming into the turn, so we'll see how that plays itself out. Meanwhile, we're continuing our bombers' orders to hit the Japanese ground troops near Mersing. So you can see here in this raid, there were 3 Blenheims, 8 169 or 139 WH-3s, and 6 Hudsons. 1 Hudson damaged by Japanese flak, 7 Japanese casualties. Another raid coming in here with 14 139 WH-3. Those are Dutch bombers out of Sumatra. This time, 40 Japanese casualties. Another raid with 9 139 WH-3s. You got to assume these Dutch crews are starting to become proficient in bombing Japanese ground troops. Meanwhile, 9 Fortresses and 9 Blenheim 4s coming out of Singapore. 75 Japanese casualties inflicted by that raid. Now we've got the torpedo bombers, the biplanes that we're ordering out of Singapore to also go in against the Japanese troops there. A raid of 9, no effect. The other 3 Blenheim 4s that we have at Singapore, as well as 14 wildebeests, go in here and inflict 13 casualties. More raids a little bit later on with some Wirraways and Blenheims, some more swordfish, 12 more Japanese casualties. And yeah, it kind of feels anticlimactic, but I think that's basically going to be the turn here, guys. I guess we'll see what happens, but unless he does something surprising, we haven't seen any new Japanese troop movements. There's no large-scale naval units detected. Maybe he'll take Brunei. He landed some troops there last turn, so maybe he'll actually shock attack it, but none of that would be terribly surprising or meaningful here. So that was the AM air phase. We'll go ahead and fast forward through here. A bunch of recon stuff going on we'll have to check out when it's our turn. And in the meantime, we'll see Pago Pago. Lots of recon, lots of recon, lots of recon. Okay. Oh. Okay, thankfully the Japanese I-9, which fired torpedoes at our light cruiser that was leaving Suva, did not hit its target, and that's good. So no anti-submarine warfare action against him, but he didn't do any damage. Meanwhile, I-2, west of Pearl, firing some torpedoes at our destroyers near Johnston Island. Again, no success there, and our destroyers fail to detect the sub, so at least the Japanese are wasting their torpedoes. Meanwhile, Japanese transports offshore of Miri, so it looks like another Japanese landing here on the North Borneo coast. It's about 2 to 3 weeks later than it should have occurred, but the Japanese are probably going to start taking Miri and Brunei in the next turn or two. And that's okay. I mean, there's not much we can do against it. I don't have sufficient naval forces in the area. The Japanese have too much air cover anyway. It looks like they did delay attacking with this regiment here. They landed with a whole regiment at Brunei. That's overkill. We've got like 500 men there. They landed with over 1,221 guns. They'll take it next turn. They did a bombardment attack. Meanwhile, we're launching a shock attack against the Japanese 124th Infantry Battalion and the 2nd SNLF Force with, 4 brigades of our own, the Australians and Indian brigades out of Singapore. So they're attacking, and they probably won't do a ton of damage. These Japanese forces take a while to wear down. You can see here we got 3-to-1 odds, which is good. It means we had a pretty big advantage, but we did lose a bit more casualties than them. This is saying 26 squads destroyed. I doubt that. The disabled figures, I believe, but the destroyed squads, not so much. Meanwhile, the Japanese lost 271 men. A higher percentage of their forces casualties, but, yeah. Anyway, Japanese deliberate attack here in China, south of Qifeng, along the railway between Suzhou and Qifeng. Obviously, they pushed us back. This was a really battered core in the first place. Whatever. We delayed the Chinese. And I think that's going to do it for this turn. So I'll catch you guys on the flip, and we'll see what our detailed results and status are once we actually get into the turn and we can take a look at some of these events. Okay, so we're into the turn. So first things first, let's go ahead and take a look at Singapore. And as we click on here, we will see no damage. So despite the fact that he attacked Singapore with 45 bombers, and it did look like he put some bombs on target, may have damaged some aircraft on the ground, he didn't actually impact the airfield's viability. He didn't knock out the runway. He didn't knock out any service units. He didn't knock out anything in the port. Singapore remains fully operational despite that Japanese raid. Meanwhile, if we take a look at the aircraft here, we have 20 ready aircraft, which I think is the exact same number we had at the end of last turn. So none of the aircraft got repaired, but at the end of the day, we didn't lose any real strength here. So more good news for us as these squadrons hopefully work to get some of their aircraft repaired and back into action. Do we have any aircraft? We've got 2 Es, 2 P-40Es. Interesting. That haven't been pulled into any units. Can I do that? Okay. Wait a minute. Aren't they already flying P-40Es? These guys. Well, it looks like there's delayed replacements. Anyway, so we've got 20 ready fighters, 63 total, so there's a lot that are being repaired. The 24th Pursuit Group, 20th Pursuit Squadron is the one squadron that is relatively ready here. It's got, what, 4 aircraft ready, one being repaired, one damaged. This one also has no aces, so that's kind of lame, but it is what it is. Yeah, so not a lot changed there. Meanwhile, as you'll recall, we moved the H-81A3s and the P-40s of the 23rd Pursuit Group, 3rd Pursuit Squadron, and AVG 1st Squadron to Johor Bahru to kind of diversify our aircraft a bit. So the P-40Es arrived. None of them are ready. It's okay. They railed in. None of them were ready to begin with. And the P-40Bs, which are the H-81s, I think one more was made ready, and we have the other 9 that are not ready. But all the fatigue levels on these crews all went down too. So we ordered them all to rest and take the day off, and they all went from like mid-30s down to 5, 4, 3, 4, 4, 1. Meanwhile, on the Dutch island of Sumatra, we have actually, I think, 2 more fighters ready than were before. I think we had 30 fighters ready before. Now we have 32. We've got 2 Demons, 10 Hawks, and 3 squadrons of B-339Ds. These are Dutch Buffaloes. We've got 12 of those ready, and then the squadron that I think got the additional planes ready, I think one more was added in the 1VIGV, and I think one was added in the 3IGIV. I think there were both Buffaloes that were added to the ready status there. So if we get the 32 that are back, was it 32? I can't even count. We get the 32 that are back here on Sumatra. We get the 20 that are at Singapore. We get the 8 that are at Johor Bahru. And we could already, if we needed to, we could mount a cap of about 60 aircraft if set to 100%. So not huge, but still down about 40 aircraft from what we were at when the Japanese attacked, but not impotent. Still, the fact that the Japanese did absolutely no damage in their bombing raid of Singapore makes me kind of feeling like I'm just going to let these guys stand down one more turn. Meanwhile, one interesting thing that has developed is we can see the Japanese have a task force that we've spotted with 6 ships and a light cruiser that has penetrated our submarine screen over here. My assumption is that these guys are running for Mersing, and that after the bombardment attack 2 days ago and our shock attack last turn, that he's bringing additional reinforcements in to Mersing. Speaking of Mersing, we lost about 20 AV, about 20 assault value here. Now, if we actually take a look at the squadrons that are deployed here, there's a lot of disruption in these units here. So this 22nd Australian Brigade is completely disrupted. There are no effective infantry squadrons. So we're actually going to have them pull back to Singapore, where they're going to rest and they're going to get their units out of disruption. The 3rd Cavalry Regiment, meanwhile, suffered basically no casualties here. This is a armored cavalry regiment. The 27th Australian Brigade, 27 disruption, 70 are ready. There definitely were not 26 squads destroyed, because if we look through here, almost all of these units are close to full strength in terms of the number of squads they have available. So this unit, for example, 103 squads total, 80 ready, 23 disrupted. That means at most, if they had full strength, they lost 5 squads, at most. So not really disastrous losses anywhere along the front, but probably enough to tell us maybe we should pause here and switch over to a defensive tactic here. Additionally, another reason it's probably a good idea to have switched to a defensive tactic is it looks like he's bringing reinforcements in. So if XTRG is really bringing reinforcements in, we probably don't want to launch a shock attack against what are going to be fresh troops. Or that's my assumption. Unless he's moving them in strategic mode. That would be interesting, but I'm not sure if he would actually move them in strategic mode. We are going to respond to these ships coming down, however. So I don't know if I'm going to get a bombing raid in on them, but I have ordered my torpedo bombers, which are all located at Singapore here. The 23 wildebeest that we have and 8 swordfish. Speaking of that, the squadron got it back up to full strength now. We're ordering all 31 of our torpedo bombers to go on to naval attack to hit these guys. Additionally, they will be on ground attack as a secondary order. In the event that they cannot find or hit these guys, they'll still bomb Mersing. All of our heavy bombers will stick with their orders to bomb Mersing as well, and that's why we'll focus in on these Japanese transports. I need to think about whether I actually am going to commit some fighters to provide a cap, because it seems like a likely cap trap for him if he makes sure to put cap over these ships, but I'm not sure. Meanwhile, the S-40 was just repaired in the yard of Singapore, fully repaired, fully ready. We've replaced the commander. We've put E.N. Blakely, a lieutenant commander who has super high aggression level, 85. We put him in charge of the submarine. It has Mark 10 torpedoes, so it has functional American torpedoes, not the Mark 14. It's the old S-boat, so it carries Mark 10 torpedoes. And then we are ordering it into Mersing to attack Japanese shipping. We're going to move it at full speed, and we're going to try and get in there, probably not ahead of the landings, but at least when the ships are still there. Meanwhile, we've sort of ordered some of our other ships also to converge on Mersing, a Dutch submarine, the KX-4, and then we've also ordered some Dutch submarines out east to Miri and to Brunei. Miri hasn't fallen yet, but when it does, the Japanese are going to get about 31,000 fuel and 8 oil. That means they're going to need to pull some of that out of there with tankers, so we're going to put some submarines off the coast. Additionally, I thought I saw a Japanese light carrier out this way, so it'd be nice to intercept that as well. Meanwhile, we are still dropping some supplies here at Bataan. So we've got multiple ships here that are unloading their supplies here. 400 left on this AMC Maruna, for example. And we've got some other ships here that are ready to return. We probably should set threat tolerance to absolute. Why is he not? Why is he set to that low? He hasn't used... Oh, he's used 450 ops? Really? Interesting. Direct route ordered. Okay, so we'll order these guys back. Meanwhile, the Japanese did just take Lubang, which I don't know if that's not Corregidor as far as I can tell, but... anyway, so the Japanese are kind of closing in here. They have quite a few units, actually only one unit, 3,500 men, adjacent to Manila. We're trying to get the 194th Tank Battalion to fall back toward Manila. It's probably 5 or 6 days away. Meanwhile, we have 2 infantry divisions in Manila. They're both Philippine infantry divisions. Not a ton of assault value there. We do have a level 1 fort, which might blunt any Japanese attack. Meanwhile, at Clark Field, we're at 550 combat value. I'm trying desperately to get some of the P-40s that we have here. We've got 12 P-40 Warhawks at Iba, but we haven't been able to draw supply despite ordering higher levels of supply. I think I probably need like a headquarters unit here or something to suck supply in, but without that supply, they can't really replenish the aircraft and get them ready. Meanwhile, we've got a bunch of other air units here, but I think they're all pretty much Philippine units. This one actually might be American. The O-47s, which are basically just recon planes. They can't really do anything. But we have some recon planes, the O-47s. The P-38 or P-35As are... They're USAAF, I guess, but they're completely locked to the Philippines, so I can't really do anything there with them. So we just kind of have to keep them at cap there. Meanwhile, these Catalinas, I guess we could probably pull these Catalinas out, maybe to Singapore. Just because, hey, you know, we're going to lose Manila before too long, so we probably should get the aircraft that we can out of there. Move these guys to Puerto Princess. We actually have some Kingfishers here, too. Must be an unrestricted base here. So we'll just kind of hop these guys along the North Borneo coast. His failure to take the North Borneo coast in the opening week of the war actually allowed our P-40s to escape, and is the main reason that our Air Force was able to get such strong forces to the Philippines. The failure to take the North Borneo coast set up the disastrous battle last turn for his air units. Patrol aircraft, so we kind of need to do a few things here. First things first, let's take a look at our patrol sectors. So we've got a fair patrol view of Mersing. Let's do this. These guys just flew over there. We're going to set them to naval attack. and we're going to use torpedoes because these things can carry a lot of frickin' torpedoes. These things can carry 2 Mark 13s. Now, the Mark 13 is a shitty torpedo, but it's still kind of cool that we can use Mark 13 torpedoes against the Japanese here from Catalinas. Let's see, these guys are set to recon. We'll actually set these guys to naval attack as well, also using torpedoes. And then we'll also set these guys to search there. Okay, so they're off recon, they're searching, so that gives us even better coverage of these enemy ships that are coming south. So we'll have the 30 torpedo bombers plus the 8 Catalinas that are running torpedo bomber attacks. Can these guys carry torpedoes too? No, these carry bombs if we do a strike, so we won't do that. The Catalinas over there aren't going to have torpedoes, so we won't do anything with them. So yeah, I think that's what we'll do. What are these bombers set to? They're still set to ground. Meanwhile, this demon is up to full strength, so I'll move him up to Djambi. Combine there. Okay. So, let's see here. Oh, so that's kind of the situation in Singapore. One other thing I did want to call out that before I forget, I noticed a fighter squadron arrived at Cape Town. All right, sorry about that. I noticed a fighter squadron arrived, or a air squadron arrived at Cape Town. I'm loading it on board transports and bringing it into theater. That's because number 232 P Squadron RAF has arrived. Our first aircraft that are better than the Buffaloes here. We've got 24 Hawker Hurricanes, the trope version, which I think was used in the tropical climates. So this is not the best fighter in the world, but it is loads and loads better than the Buffaloes that we have to play with right now in Singapore. We are sending it to Singapore. I think that may be a foolish move. I think by the time they arrive, the situation may change, but essentially we're going to send these 24 fighters to wherever they can cause the Japanese the most hurt, and that's something that we're going to do right away. Meanwhile, we've got a bunch of anti-aircraft units that are coming on in South Africa. We're switching them all to strategic mode, and we're going to send them into transport convoys soon. We're doing the same thing here with a light AA force up here at Aden, and Abadan still doesn't have anything else. Meanwhile, we are building up defenses in Burma for what we assume will be an eventual Japanese strike against the Burma Road here. So we've got a large force at Pegu, 380 assault value here. It is digging in as well. It's got some engineers, 53 engineers, 3 engineer vehicles. It's a level 2 fort already. It's going to be a level 3 soon, and it's behind a river. So if the Japanese advance into Pegu, they have to shock attack. Additionally, we're building up forces in Taiguai, in Meltka, in Mandalay, all along this position. In addition to that, we're also moving some troops forward here to India, to the city of Chittagong, where we can potentially sea lift over 300 assault value and some artillery into the Burma theater as well to really crush the Japanese when they do commit large-scale forces. Now, this may be a little bit adventurous. I've heard players say you're better off just staying back in India and holding the line there. The thing is, those supplies from the Burma Road are so critical to China being able to continue the fight. I do want to do what I can to hold that line there. So I am keeping some troops back in India and building up fortifications in some of these border towns. But in the meantime, I'm also moving troops forward to Burma because you can see the supply situation in China is not great. And, that's something we need to be mindful of. Meanwhile, I'm strategically pulling back in China with large numbers of troops here. So we're actually going to abandon Kukong. It's not really a place we can hold on to. We don't get enough supply, and it is on a rail line. So we're building up strong defenses at Changsha, at Hainan, at Guilin, and at Luqiao here, all along this defensive line here. We're building up fortresses all in these cities. We're starting to pull some of these troops back. He has advanced into Wuchao, or Wuchou. So we I don't think we can just retreat from this city quite yet. We want to make sure that he attacks and destroys some of the industry there. But we are pulling out of Pakoi, which I have no way to bring supplies into or whatever. Essentially, we're forming a river line here. And then we've also pulled out of Xinyang, and we're moving those troops to Nanyang. I've moved 2 of these corps here, the 57th and 76th, were on their way to Luoyang, but I've canceled those orders. I'm keeping them at Nanyang. Our 2 main northern bastions are going to be at Nanyang and Luoyang, as well as Chengkao. So I guess 3 bastions are going to be in that general vicinity. Meanwhile, I'm going to stack this mountain hex with all of these troops up here in the north to prevent him flanking our position and going around to Yan'an. We can't entrench here because there's no base, but we can put ourselves behind a river and on very tough terrain, which is just about as good as any fort, can be. And that's kind of the situation right now in China. Meanwhile, we already kind of looked at the Philippines. We kind of looked at Borneo. We're in the process of pulling more fuel oil out of the Dutch East Indies. We've got over 25,000 fuel on board 2 tankers at Oosthaven. We're starting loading up 3 more tankers here at Oosthaven now that the docks are free. There's only 10,000 oil left in Oosthaven. I'm hoping we can pull some of the 151 up at Palembang out. Additionally, Balkapen has over 50,000 fuel. We're loading that up on some tankers here in the port. We're also reloading a new tanker here with 1,800 fuel at Java, or sorry, Surabaya, or however you pronounce that, as well. So we're doing that also. We'll take a look at the Prince of Wales and the Repulse here in a moment. Let's pull those tankers out, or those ships out. Sub-patrols, we're sending some additional subs, which were just healed Sarajevo up here to deal with the Japanese near Brunei. We have begun reinforcing Darwin quite heavily, not just in terms of troops, but also in terms of supply. So we've got over 23,000 supply, over 31,000 fuel. You can see here we've got some ships here that are loading up with fuel. Let's actually transfer this AVP away, and we'll get that replenishment ship out. The British sailor, however, is going to head back to Balkapen to try and pull more fuel out. I'm being really aggressive with trying to get as much fuel out of the Dutch East Indies as possible. That's because right now, with all the combat going on in the South Pacific, it's a little bit more difficult to supply fuel directly from America. But more importantly, this is a huge amount of fuel really close to Australia that could help propel Australia's economy forward. And we know the KB, at least as of 2 or 3 turns ago, was at Kwajalein, so it's still safe to operate in this area because he hasn't deployed any naval assets. If he was roaming through the Java Sea and the Mascar Strait, he could completely shut down all naval commerce getting out of Java and destroy anything that moved there and ensured that more than 200,000 fuel wouldn't be flowing to Australia. But he hasn't, and therefore more than 200,000 fuel is on its way to Australia. We've already unloaded a fair bit of that at Perth. The first wave of transports and tankers are offloading 22,000 fuel in this task force, 6,400, 18,000 here, 24,000 here. This one's almost done. It's down to 200, 13,000 in this force. These tankers here, the 5,100 fuel is already offloaded from the Augustina. You can see Perth's fuel stock is up to 68,000, and some of that gets transported. It's not super efficient, so you do lose a fair bit of the fuel, but some of that's already been transported to Sydney, which has seen its fuel stocks go up by almost 10,000. So again, it's fueling the Australian economy. That fuel turns into supply. You can see here Sydney has over 270,000 supply, and Australia can really fuel itself. Its own economy can really build up massive stockpiles. It can kind of be that factory on the front line and really ease your logistics. The real challenge is getting enough fuel there to make a difference. Meanwhile, at Numaya, we've got the 39th Australian Battalion of CMF infantry sections. So these are regular infantrymen. These are not militia, are ashore and unpacking. It'll take 2 more days for them to unpack, but their garrison strength is up to 69. We've also got another 1,200 troops on the way over here. We've got some 840 troops on the way to Suva. We've got some 2,500 troops on the way to Suva, and we're finishing loading up another about 1,000 men for transport to Nomaya. Meanwhile, on Suva, we're pulling 1 brigade out and moving it to Nomaya. The 4th Australian Brigade should be to Nomaya in the next 2 days, and they're actually moving amphibious, so these guys will be ready to fight the moment they land. And yeah, we're bringing additional reinforcements in. Meanwhile, we're pulling some of our cruisers out to Auckland. We're also pulling some of these transports that are very low on fuel and have no more reason to be at Suva out of the theater as well, in order to make sure that the Japanese don't arrive with rich targets. We also have the 161st Infantry Regiment, which is flank speeding it in toward Suva here. They should arrive in the next 2 days or so, I would guess, as well as the 111th United States Navy Base Force should also be arriving at Suva here in the next turn or two, or a couple of turns. Maybe we should slow them down. So it'll take 2 days if I slow them down like this, but they'll have sufficient fuel to do it. Let's do that. Then let's meet the task force over here and refuel. So these guys are moving at flank, but I don't think they're going to have enough fuel to get there. Now, if I slow them down, I will. Here's a question. What if I just pull out the heavy units? I don't know if these are the gas guzzlers or if it's the transports. So if I pull those guys out, move these guys at full speed, they'll get a lot closer. Let's do this. Let's save the game real quick. And let's see. I'm going to see if we can replenish from C to give them enough fuel to get there, because they're just shy of enough fuel to get there. So we can do that. We do take an ops hit, so you can see their range shrinks. So they'll basically have 1, 2, 3, 4 range each hex. But they can get there at flank speed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they'll arrive the turn after next, by the look of it. The 161st Regiment. Infantry Regiment with enough fuel. Meanwhile, the heavy cruisers and destroyers that had been escorting them, we're going to send these guys to New Zealand to kind of get them out of harm's way. If he does bring in massive amounts of troops, I have no desire to have to deal with that. So we'll move those guys that direction. Let's see here. These guys can make it under their own fuel. But there's a lot of subs there. I mean, I don't want to just, like, serve my transports up without any escort. So maybe we should at least have one destroyer with them. If we have one destroyer with them, they can't make it fuel-wise. At least if it's that destroyer. The Mugford, maybe. Yes, the Mugford can make it. All right. Mainly because I don't want the Japanese to be able to just attack these guys on the surface. The speed should alleviate some concerns, though. All right, so these guys are going to New Zealand. So we've got multiple heavy cruiser outfits going to New Zealand. These guys are going to make a stop at Savi here, maybe to destroy if he's got any ships left there, if they can engage him first. Although presumably that'll use a fair bit of fuel. So maybe we should actually use this here to go after these guys. Yeah, so we'll do that. So that's what's happening here. Where are these guys going to meet now? I don't even know who these guys are going to meet. Maybe we should just flank speed it for Suva and drop some fuel here, and maybe we can help the transports there with a little bit of extra gas, since everybody else should be able to make it now. Help get some of these out, because the real thing I'm going to need to make sure I do is get my transport ships out of here once his carriers are spotted. We still have a reasonable search effort way out here to the north. It's a little bit more scant here near Espiritu Santo. I probably need some recon flying out of Nomaya. Meanwhile, apparently we got a bunch of A-24 Banshees which just arrived. These American? These are SBDs. We just got some. Oh my goodness, yes. I don't know where they came from. The game must have just spawned them here. But we've got 22, 36, 52 American Army A-24 Banshees, which are SBD-2 Dauntless dive bombers, just run by the American Air Force. Now, admittedly, their experience is trash. They're not going to hit anything with level 30 experience. And they also, they're currently not actually trained. So nobody is there, and they're currently not repaired. Sorry. So there's that. Do we have an airfield here? We do. All right, we're gonna. Oh, I can't transfer. She's restricted. I don't want whirlways. Their range is too short. Oh, by the way, guys, I also transferred my Buffaloes and my Marine dive bombers here, the Vindicators, to Suva. Not because I didn't think they were valuable at Pago Pago, but until the airfield is level 3 at Pago, I don't think we can launch offensive operations against Savi. So we kind of have to keep them at an airfield that's over level 3 for them to do any offensive airstrikes. Suva is not over 3, but it'll get there in the next couple of days. It's up to 53% to level 3. So, I don't think you can do... I know you can't do ground attack when you're level 2. I think you've got to be level 3. At least for sweeps you have to be... I don't quite know the rules, but I know sweeps can only be done out of level 3 airfields, but caps can be done out of level 1 airfields, and I tried to order them to bomb last turn, and they didn't. So I just decided to transfer them to Suva to try and get them to an airfield that's a little bit stronger. Meanwhile... we're working on expanding the forts here at Nadi. We're moving the New Zealand brigade, the 30th Brigade, battalion over to Suva so we can link up the New Zealanders there and have rebuild their units there. We've got these transports back on their way to Australia. These guys are unloading and then they're going to head back. So long story short, we've got a lot of ships and aircraft and everything like that currently loading and reloading and doing all sorts of stuff. With the addition of those bombers there, the Air Force at Suva has increased to 64 aircraft. You can see here we've got 17 Vindicator dive bombers, and we've got 16 F-2A-3 Buffalo fighters with reasonable experience, level 64 experience. These guys are trained. They are experienced. We just don't have any better aircraft to give them, which would be nice. They're United States Marines, so they're in crappy aircraft. Not because they're Marines, just because that's why they don't have the F-4F, is they're not carrier pilots. We'll set these aircraft. Can we set them to 21? I've been noticing XTRG using his zeros at 24,000 feet. I want to keep my guys a little bit lower, though, because I don't think his dive bombers will come in at that altitude. And I'd like to keep my fighters a little bit closer to where his bombers are coming in. I think you have a better chance of breaking into their formation if you do that. Meanwhile, the Vindicator will set its altitude to 10,000. She carries a 1,000-pound bomb, just like the Dauntless. She's just a little bit older and slower. We're getting a little bit long in the tooth on this episode, guys. It's getting to be up there lengthwise. I did want to call one other thing out. I just got a arrival of some PBY Catalinas at Pearl Harbor from the mainland, and we're going to take this transport, the Aloka Prospector, and we're going to load it up with a pursuit squadron, 18 P-40B Warhawks, and we're going to send these to the South Pacific as well to get some better fighter aircraft out that direction. Meanwhile, do we have anyone that's not... these guys are supply missioning. Don't do that. Do naval search. And let's transfer you guys. So we're going to transfer these B-17s somewhere. I don't know how far they can fly. Probably not as far as Suva. Yeah. They can't fly to Suva. They can't make it. What's the furthest they can go? That's all in the U.S. They can get all the way to Pago, or Pago, or however you pronounce it, in a single flight? Well, yeah, we're going to do that. So we got 5 B-17s on the island of... I know I'm getting yelled at last episode for pronunciation of this island, and I don't yet know how to fully pronounce it. I'm sorry. All right, so we just moved these guys. The headquarters unit we're going to move because they haven't moved yet. We'll fly him to Suva, so we now got B-17s on Suva. So let's switch this over here, and we've got these guys, naval search, 40%, select on map, straight ahead. All right. So we've now got a more dense, they have slightly shorter range, don't they? The newer models of B-17s have shorter range by a couple of hexes. But in any event, so we've kind of densified this search arc line, and now with these guys on Suva, we're going to take these 3 B-17s, and we're going to set them to search this direction. I'd like to do... Yeah. No. B-17s. Set on map. Alright, fuck. I wish that the aim didn't, like, pull me back the way it does. If I hit select on map, it's going to move me back this way a bit. Alright, so did that expand it out the way I wanted it to? It did. Okay. So, now that we've done that, we've got a squadron of... Are they Hudsons? Long range? We're going to transfer these guys over to Nomaya. But apparently they can't fly to Nomaya? Oh, these guys are restricted. I really don't want to... B-17s aren't restricted. Vindicators and Buffaloes. Everybody else here is restricted, with the exception of the Catalinas, which are doing a big part of the recon over here. So I think we're going to have to just live with this for now until I can get better recon. We get any other surprise aircraft around here anywhere? We got a Seagull! She's restricted also. Are all these aircraft restricted? Yeah. What about down here? Yep. Lame. I don't want to give up on the aircraft we have flying out of Moresby. I think those are useful. Maybe we pull the HUD. Nope, they're restricted too. Lovely. Okay. Almost a level 2 forts there. I'm actually going to pull most of these troops out back to Port Moresby. There's no way we can hold these troops in place where they are on the northern tip of Malaya. Or of New Guinea. There's no way they're going to put up anything more than token resistance. They're going to fall to the first thing that they face. So we'll pull them back. Gives us an extra 27 attack value at Port Moresby in the event that they do land here. Alright. We're unloading some supply. We're already building forts here. What's this? Transport's on the way. Meanwhile, we've got the 44th and 45th Indian Brigades on their way to Nomaya. That would be like 200 assault value, and they're headed down this way. I don't know if they're going to get there in time, depending on what XTRG strategy is. If he focuses on Fiji, then they may get there on time, although this is all pretty close. So if in the event that it gets too hot in the South Pacific for these guys, we'll probably just divert these 2 brigades to Port Moresby, and we can instantly put 2 very quality Indian brigades, which had been on their way to Singapore, into Port Moresby. That one's worth 100 assault value, the 44th, and the 45th is worth another 100. So we'd have 200 assault value into Port Moresby in addition to the 67 we'd already have. Basically, it would immediately require XTRG if he wanted to take the island or the base, to commit almost a full division of troops to do it. But yeah, so I'm assuming he's going for Fiji, but he could go for Nomaya, he could go for Pago, we'll see. Anyway, so I think that kind of gives you guys a good picture of what I'm planning to do. We're going to call off the attack on Mersing. We're going to continue bombing troops there. I need to figure out my escort situation, but I'll probably do that offline to figure out if I want to send any escorts with my raid on the base at Mersing or on the Japanese troop ships that are presumably troop ships. Always spotted as one light cruiser, but there's no reason for it to be there unless it's like a Japanese fast transport. It would be a really good opportunity for him to cap trap me, so it might make some sense to have some escorts come in. But on the counter, I'd really prefer to give my fighters more rest. On the flip side, I don't want my dive bomb, or I don't want my torpedo planes to get shot to pieces. So it's kind of tricky there. Meanwhile, the one other thing I do want to call out is I have started consolidating my troops in America, which are of free HQs, so these Pacific Fleet units that we can move wherever we want in San Diego. And I've started switching them over to strategic mode. So then that way what I can do is I can just kind of concentrate my troop transports down here near San Diego and get them loaded up and starting to reinforce. I'm also going to try and do that with some air units. So I've moved some P-40E Warhawks. I've moved some P-36 Mohawks down this way. And that's my intent, is to use San Diego as the main embarkation point for our troop convoys that are headed to the Pacific. Meanwhile, Los Angeles is going to be used as our fuel destination, so where our fuel convoys or tanker convoys come out of. We're actually this turn loading up 2 tanker convoys, one for destination Sydney, and it'll have 28,000 fuel on it, one for Auckland in Australia with 23,000 fuel on it, and one for Pearl Harbor that'll have 20,000 fuel on it. Just to make sure we're topping off those bunkers at Pearl. But I think that's going to do it. Actually, one other quick thing before we... and sorry, guys, I do have a little bit of a cold if it sounds a little bit nasally. If we look at the actual combat results, the intelligence here, we lost 2 aircraft last turn to op losses. We lost 1 aircraft on the ground, so presumably that was at Singapore. That was a... what was it on the ground? It was a Buffalo. So we did lose 1 Buffalo on the ground last turn. No damage to the port, no damage to the airfield, but 1 Buffalo was destroyed. We lost 2 DC-2 in operational accidents. The Japanese lost 3 Sally 2A bombers over Singapore. They also lost 2 Babs. All of these aircraft were lost to flak. They also lost 2 Jake E-13A1 Jake float planes, I believe they are, and 2 Babs. So they lost 13 more aircraft. We lost 3. Did we lose any pilots? We lost no pilots killed, 1 wounded. And so we still have our 2 aces, Armstrong and Brownwell. So that's the situation right now in the Pacific Theater. We'll see how things play out in the next turn. I'll probably finagle with my orders or my stuff for another turn or so. Or not turn, for another, I don't know, hour or so off camera. But that's the summary. That's where we're at. As of Christmas Day, 1941, the Allies are still hanging in there, folks. So until next time, this is the Historical Gamer, as always, saying thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. And we'll see what happens. Oh, one other thing. I actually did quite a bit this turn, just not things you're going to see right away. I have a lot of submarines heading west. So we've got some subs here, the Pollock. We've got a task force of 5 subs out of Pearl, 2 of them S-boats. We've got another task force out of Pearl with even more S-boats, 4 S-boats and 2 fleet boats. And they're not going to operate as a group. I'm going to break it up once they get closer to action here. We've also got the Dolphin on the way to Kwajalein here to kind of scope the harbor out. But I'm going to basically be flooding the Marshall Islands with subs. If we think he's making a play for the South Pacific, then he's going to need to bring in logistics because he does not have a lot of fuel in this area. I've played as the Japanese. I know that Kwajalein isn't a huge major base. It's big enough to prevent my subs from entering the port, but that's about it. Truk is another major base, and we've spotted some ships there. So my real intent is going to be to cluster some subs around Truk and some subs north of Kwajalein, because if he's going to drive south, I think it may be too late for us to catch his invasion forces, assuming that he is doing this. I'm making a lot of assumptions, but he took Savi, which makes, again, no sense to me unless he's going to make some major plays elsewhere. So I'm going to flood this area with submarines. The logic is this. I haven't seen any of his tankers. I haven't really hit a single merchant ship outside of the invasion fleets. My subs have had the most success at places like Midway, where we have a large concentration of enemy ships. Presumably, if he's making a South Pacific drive, there's going to be a lot of ships there. I may or may not arrive in time to intercept the guys leaving Kwajalein, but if we don't, he's still going to need to pour fuel and supplies there to keep the momentum going. So I'm going to try and intercept convoys that he has moving to Truk into Kwajalein, and that means that even if he does have success on the South Pacific, he might, not really be able to efficiently or effectively consolidate any of his gains without those supplies, without that fuel coming in. And really, I just want to punish him. And I feel like he's doing a really good job of anti-submarine warfare around the Malay Peninsula. He's doing a really good job of anti-submarine warfare, along our trip line here north of Luzon. We haven't seen any troop transports move this way. I don't really think my subs it's worth that much risk. I'm going to put a few subs into the Yellow Sea and into the Sea of Japan to try and intercept convoys presumably coming down from China with resources. But I don't know if it's worth the risk until my torpedoes get better to cram Japan full. And those S-boats that I have there can't reach Japan, but where they can reach is they can reach the Marshall Islands. So, I've got short-legged effective boats that can operate in the Marshalls where we know there should be a large amount of Japanese shipping. So, hey, let's destroy what we can with what we've got, with what we can reach. So let's focus on the Marshalls, because we know there's going to probably be a lot of activity around there. Let's focus on Truk, because we know it's probably a main logistical hub, and maybe we impede his ability to supply his invasions in New Guinea. Maybe we don't, but hopefully we at least sink some troop transports, some cargo ships, and, God help us, maybe some tankers. They've got to have tankers around. Like, I don't know where else his tankers are. I haven't seen anything. So my logic there is cram the Marshalls and Truk to get what Japanese tankers are supporting his advance there. Put some subs north of Brunei and Miri to get what tankers he may bring out of here. And then attempt to oppose the invasion of Mersing with subs, and attempt to get some subs into the Sea of Japan and Yellow Sea. But thus far, he hasn't really taken any oil objectives, so I don't really know where to put my subs until he does. Like, once he takes Palembang, yeah, we're going to need to make sure we've got subs intercepting his fueling there. But other than that, I don't know. Anyway, guys, that's enough of me rambling. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'll finish things up on the offline, and then we'll see what XTRG does with the turn probably today. I would imagine by the time I post this, he'll be streaming his results. This is a one-day turnaround for me, so pretty quick. Hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time, as always, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.